Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
I'm
He
Nicholas,
can splice it.
the host of Why Try. This is Rod Englert, founder of Englert Forensic Consultants, and we're here to talk about his business. So you could do a much better job describing the business than I could. So can you kind of give me the overview of your business and what you guys do?
It's a crime scene consulting business, Nicholas. It is where my team, Englert Forensic Consultants, goes to primarily homicide scenes and figure out what happens. It's a puzzle, and we put all the pieces together called Reconstruction, using many, many, many resources like DNA, autopsies, ballistics from guns, knives, all of these different resources that they're experts in those fields. We use them and their information, their literature, and we have some expertise in each one of those areas, but a very minimal amount according to the expert that has a large amount of information. But ours, we specialize in the reconstruction using blood patterns and all these resources.
Okay, so at what point do you get brought in on a case? Because you guys travel all over the place to do this work, so I'm assuming there's certain circumstances where you get called in somewhere people don't necessarily call you in.
Eventually down the road, if it's complex, we will usually get called, and it's by word of mouth. We don't advertise. I guess you could call our website maybe something that's notable, that it has information there in what we do. A strong emphasis that we have is blood patterns, and across the country and the world, there's not a lot of people that understand blood patterns, and that's meaningful information that we specialize in that particular area under the umbrella of Reconstruction.
Okay, sure. So kind of zooming way back in terms of the arc of your career, how did you get interested and into this particular, is this a pretty specialized area that you're in? How did you get into that?
Well, I first became a police officer because my cousin, whom I admire, and you said you read the book and it's in there, he influenced me throughout my career and still does today. And so once I got into my career, I remember going to the first crime scene as a police officer in uniform. And I didn't understand the blood. And I made a huge mistake by saying that that we had an axe murder when actually the person was a diabetic and had ulcers and had all kinds of medical issues and was throwing up against the wall, and he was drunk and going around, and I didn't even see an axe, and I called in detectives to come. We needed people down here, and that was early in my career, and got down there, they got there, and it was a creepy scene to me. And
I think probably most people would be unnerved.
And I was so embarrassed. I'm still embarrassed talking to you about it today. That's been 50 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a failure. I mean, it was a error, not a big thing. I make a bigger thing out of it because it was so unique to me at that time. And but I learned from it, and subsequent to that, all the failures and the misses and the strikes, and you learn more and more how to be, better at what you do.
Right. Reading the book, I got kind of the impression that you wanted to be able to get that call right in the future, or like that was very important to you, maybe to avoid embarrassment on some level to start out with. But you started studying this at that point, like pretty early on, and really making it something that you're interested in learning about, or like a focus for you in your education. At what point did you stop being like a cop and then start being a forensic consultant? Like, how long did that take to really unfold?
For that training, I'm still a cop. I still feel like a cop. I still talk like, and I love the uniform. If I had my life to do all over, I'd do exactly the same thing. But that transition occurred when I was teaching in Louisville, Kentucky at the Southern Police Institute. I remember Raymond Dahl, D-A-H-L was his name. He was a gruff person. He was an ex-chief of police from Minneapolis. And he got up and talked, and he was sort of the facilitator. And there's like 100 police officers, detectives from around the world. I was an attendee. It was in 1976. I talked to him afterwards. I said, you know what? You've had pathologists here for 2 weeks, and you've had all these people that are experts in these different fields. and you didn't have one cop get up and talk. He said, well, can you do it? I said, well, I'll try. I'd like to do it. Scared me to death. And so I did, and I gave a speech, and then he was at the back of the room. I'll never forget it. It was a very sloped area, and this was like 8 months after I talked to him. He hired me to come to Louisville, Kentucky, and speak. And at the back of the room, where there was a little step up, and he's way back there, and I'm way up at the front of the lectern, and he goes like this. He gives me a thumbs up, and that boosted my confidence to no end. And I taught there for years and years and years and years and years, 3 times a year. And when they would have courses around the country, I would teach. That was my transition. You know why? Because I was talking about blood patterns. And I said, there's a lot to be learned about blood patterns. And I was saying things that were wrong. And I was reading what I was saying was wrong to the attendees. I was reading in books that was right. The people writing the books didn't even know. Like the height of a drop of blood, for instance, the higher it is, the more it spatters out to the side. That was so wrong. But I remember studying and teaching that, and I had to reflect on all those errors that were made in the literature, and so that was my transition. And then it just went from there, and then I got hired on my first case in like 81 from a detective in Seattle, Washington. And it was a horse kick case. Scared me to death. I mean, here you're asking me to tell you how to do that case, and it just developed and developed over time.
Yeah. Well, how old were you when you got that first case? Like, early?
I was my first case. That would have been in my early 30s.
Early 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. And it seems like the field has really grown from fringe, probably to say the least, to something that's pretty mainstream now. I mean, there's like an entire TV show just about a guy who's a blood spatter analysis and like Dexter, right?
Right.
So how do you, what do you think has worked so well in like that gaining traction? Is it just a matter of like, it's just a useful tool that like gained acceptance over like a 30 or 40 year period?
Well, there's a lot of people your age today that I admire for doing research. And they go into this field and they're very fascinated by this field. And so there's so many areas that can still be explored. And so they'll do research on all kinds of situations involving blood stains and angles and direction and fine mist type patterns. And that is causing this field to attract more people, more research, more literature, to where it's becoming, and there's not been one case that I know of in the United States today, and I even testified to this, that has been reversed because of an error on blood patterns. Not one.
Interesting.
I mean, cases are reversed because of errors in ballistics, bullets misidentified, ubiquitous hair by the FBI. In identifying hair as to belonging to, it's consistent with belonging to this particular person, that's out. No more. And a lot of cases were reversed because of those errors.
Oh, okay. So it's like the technique itself is flawed, and like people have like, or like other techniques have been proven to be less reliable than people thought.
It's not the technique, it's not the ability to be able to do it, it's the findings themselves that are faulty.
Like the application of it?
Well, no, it's not the application, it's the identification that it's not valid to be able to say that, well, this hair here, because of its size and shape and the curly part, it belongs to a certain race. And in my identification of this hair to this particular race, whatever that may be, it's consistent with belonging to that person. That's faulty. That's not true anymore. That doesn't happen anymore. Right. But what does happen is when you go into and you find that hair and you find that person and the DNA matches.
Right.
That's good science. But ballistics was another area. Let me tell you, a huge one is odontology.
What's
that? That's odontology is bite marks.
Oh, okay.
Bite marks used to be, the thing.
Because people have dental records, right? Like
there's been so many cases reversed because of that. because it's not valid science. And there's been doctors that I know, good doctors, good dentists, that have been able to identify that, in my opinion, this bite mark on the breast of this woman was coming from the mouth of this person here that's been arrested. But now that's not valid anymore, because that's junk science. I mean, that's what it's been identified as, junk science, by our courts, and they can't testify to that anymore. So there's cases that have been reversed.
Interesting, but blood spatter has
there's not
been
one
robust.
case that is in the books, in the literature, or in precedents where they've been reversed.
Interesting. How has technology changed the work that you do?
Oh, DNA has changed the world. DNA, ballistics now, and there's just tons of information regarding just ballistics alone, and the quickness of how we can identify where that bullet came from and what gun that came from. Like in an hour now, with ATF, they're able to identify a lot of information about a certain bullet found at a scene, or a shell casing found at a scene. I just entered it into the data that goes into a bank of information.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was really interesting on your website was your digital reconstruction of a shooting with, I think, like you have kind of like a rough outline of like, okay, here's like roughly where the crime would have been committed. Here's the murderer, like, or the shooter, like, fleeing the scene. Cop cars arrive.
You're talking about a moving animation.
Yeah.
That's a moving diagram. We don't. The word animation makes people think it's a cartoon, and it's not. But it is an animate. It's taken the facts from the case, and only the facts. No guesswork. You have to go and deal with facts. Facts that can never be changed.
Right.
People can lie, and you can't depend upon those facts. People's observations, which may be legitimate and pure in thought, you can't depend upon that. But facts are scientific facts. Direction of a bullet going through a body, blood on a wall, that's a different pattern. All those you can rely upon. You put those facts and feed them into, and this is not you feed them into a person that illustrates, or a person that does these diagrams, these animations, and it comes out to what you have here. And it's based upon the validity of the facts you find at the scene.
Yeah. How influential has that been in various cases?
Very persuasive.
Very persuasive.
You know, it helps the jury understand. In a case in San Diego just recently that John, that's here as my partner, he was involved in the making of, by using the drone, he was involved in the making of this moving diagram. And the plaintiffs who's suing the U.S. Department of Marshal Service sued two people that were involved in a shooting. The plaintiff liked it so much, even though it came from us, that he probably showed it. I was able to sit in the courtroom. He probably showed that to the jury 20 times, kept backing it up and going forward, backing it up. And the more I couldn't understand, why is he doing that? It's damaging, you know? I mean, it's damaging. I mean, it's just so powerful. It's very persuasive because it takes you back to the scene.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like a common tactic, if you're defending someone, is just to inject doubt wherever possible and make it harder for people to visualize. I would imagine. I'm not at all.
You're right. You cloud the issue. Smoke and mirrors.
Right. So this really seems like would remove a lot of that. It would make it very clear. No, these are the facts that we know for sure.
Exactly.
This isn't this level isn't interpretation. This is what we know. Anything above this level would be what we surmise might happen.
Exactly.
But we'll have to agree on this.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's such an interesting and powerful tool, I think.
It is. It's very powerful. We love it. We're in the building of one. I've been talking about it on the phone today. That's what we were actually doing in Southern California Saturday and Sunday of this week, was meeting and going to the scene and doing measurements. John, who's behind you here, was actually doing with a rangefinder, actually doing the distances where witnesses said they saw this, saw that. So, you know why? To build a moving diagram.
Yeah, it seems incredibly powerful. I think
It is great, and I love it. And it's being more and more accepted by our courts.
Yeah, I believe it. So kind of a different taking like a little bit of a different direction. Like so, you have a book which I think is like a really interesting read, talking about kind of like there's a element of like a technical side to it, like how blood spatter analysis works, and like a series of like interesting case studies, where you start out with like kind of simple cases, like simple analysis, and by the end you kind of like I as a reader felt like, oh, like I kind of get what's happening here. Like, oh yeah, you referenced that. Like, it's really cohesive. I think it's an interesting book. So that listeners can check it out. I'll put a link in any promotion I do for Blood Secrets is the name of it. But I'm curious because you mentioned this thing about criminals are like adapting to like the new tools that like law enforcement has. So people are aware that like blood spatter analysis is now more common. There's like all kinds of movies and like TV shows saying like, oh, like you can shoot a gun from inside a plastic bag, and that makes it hard. That confounds law enforcement in some cases. Like I think you might have called it like a little bit of like an arms race, or like a maybe like just whatever like the level that people have is. People are always like trying to like hack into that. How do you see that like unfolding?
In other words, what's your question? Your question is, are the criminals be able to look at and read my book and be able to figure out what not to do? Is that
I suppose so. Yeah. Like, do you find that that's a challenge for you in your work? Is that how common is that? Well, people are that premeditated about it.
There are some. I can't deny that there are some that we had a young girl in a case that killed her parents, and she disguised things so well. I mean, she put a robe on backwards. She wore a hairnet that she flushed down the toilet before the police got there, killed both of her parents, because, and it's in the book, she did not want, I mean, her parents didn't want her to date a person that was 5 years older, and he was from another country, he was illegal, and he was a dope dealer, and the parents didn't smell right. They said, you either break up with him tomorrow or we're going to cause it to happen. She kills her parents and fakes everything. I mean, fakes everything, even to the leaving the residence to go to neighbors, call the police, somebody came in the house and shot my parents. She studied forensics. She knew enough about forensics to be able to, but
she still got caught.
Not everything is in that book. Right?
Yeah.
Not everything is to a criminal's mind. And a criminal that commits a criminal act like that, they're very few and far between. In Chicago, name is Richie. It's in the book also. What he did, he raped that gal and he planted DNA. And you do have guys that plant DNA. How do they know to do that? Well, they read. You can't stop the literature. I mean, look behind you here. That's just a few of the books that I have involving criminals. And so, yeah, I can't deny that that's done.
Well, I mean, my point isn't so much that like you're like helping criminals as it is like, well, how does that make your job harder? Like that's kind of
our job's hard. I mean, complex cases are hard no matter how you cut it, even if they don't know what they're doing. Because sometimes, and criminals get lucky, right, John? Criminals get lucky, and they do. And so, but there's most of the time, like 99% of the time, Nicholas, they leave something behind. Because every scene that you go into, the criminal takes something in and he takes something out. What do I mean by going in and leaving something? Maybe a footprint, maybe a fingerprint, maybe DNA. And when he takes something out, maybe a blood pattern on his clothes that he can't even see. So many times, like if I went and shot somebody and get the pattern, well, I don't see it. O.J. Simpson didn't see it on his socks.
Yeah.
And he left the socks behind.
Yeah, like the one with the robe where there was nothing visible at all on it. Like, well, it couldn't have the murder couldn't have been committed while the person was wearing this robe, and then you like put the luminol. Is that
yeah.
And then it just like it's just totally glowed in the dark.
And it was San Diego. Yeah. Right. Killed his wife and 3 kids.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
Just okay. So, I mean, this is something I was curious about too. You've seen some super grisly stuff, and just kind of routinely, like you're just like you spend your life in this pretty
every day.
gory world. Yeah. How do you keep that from like keeping you awake at night? Like, how do you not have just nightmares, and like how do you like sleep and like get yourself into like a state of like mental calm?
I park it. I mean, it's an automatic park. I don't think about it because I almost quit my job over the California Highway Patrol officer that I gave mouth to mouth to. That was the most traumatic thing in my career.
That was very early on.
By myself, my first night, Christmas Eve, and that was very traumatic. And I think over time, in seeing this over and over and over again, it may have an impact that I don't even recognize, like PTSD. I don't think I have PTSD, but it still bothers me when I see children. That bothers me. But what I wanted to tell you is, I think my faith has a lot to do with how I can park it. My relationships. One thing that I learned in the police academy, LAPD, and this was taught to us. It was actually Marilyn Monroe's first husband, and he would talk to us as a class, saying, "Do not associate with just cops. Expand your horizons to your neighbors, to friends, to others that aren't involved in law enforcement." Because that's all you talk about. I mean, if you associate with only police officers, it's not so much that you start thinking like them, you don't think any other way. You start pushing out people that you just sort of, you just don't want to be around, and these are decent people. So I think that has helped me a lot, being able to not, I don't share a lot of what I've seen or do to certain people like John or people that you have to be sensitive to what other people's thoughts are. I mean, you tell them about a case that you think is nothing. I mean, they'll go throw up their groceries, I mean, look at that guy, it's bad. But I think that's it. It's a lot of it is building relationships with other people, and that's in trust. And that gives you a good feeling that doesn't allow you to have these thoughts. Nightmares? No. I don't have nightmares. I think more when I get into a case, somebody's got to work this case. It's a job. And I think I've got to solve it. So my time spent sleepless nights are, how is he fooling me, or how is she fooling me? How come I can't figure this out?
It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle.
Sure.
And I know the answer's there. And I'm going to find it. That's it. So you don't think about the kids that are killed. You don't think, you park it
Right.
because you've got a job.
It becomes you kind of just like engage this like clinical part of your mind.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. What do you think are like the personality traits, or what makes a person successful in what you do?
You gotta like people. You gotta love people. You gotta enjoy people. You've got to laugh at yourself. You can't be such a perfectionist that that failure just drives you nuts. You can't. You have to like and love people. It's all about people. People are people because of other people. That's how we get our dignity and worth, from other people. If there were nobody else in the world, just you alone, that'd be a sad, sad world, right? So it's about people, liking people.
Okay. And with that in mind, what does success look like to you personally?
Well, it's not money and wealth. It's not possessions. I mean, that's to me, success is people again. Is the trust that you build with people, generosity, forgiving yourself, having strong relationships with others that you can depend upon and they depend upon you, having a confidant that you can go to and tell your deepest, darkest secrets and know that he or she is not going to violate that.
Right.
Having a healthy world, having a family that is doing well. That's success. And that's not about possessions. It's nothing about that. I mean, I know some very, very wealthy people that are sad people to be around,
Right?
And they don't even like themselves.
Yeah,
And they've got everything they
bad
think.
place to be.
That's right. And they don't.
Yeah,
They don't.
it's a real thing that happens to people. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
How do you feel like your work has impacted your personal life? Or, well, here, kind of coming back
Yeah,
up to
sure,
one thing.
sure.
You mentioned like having a confidant. And I'm curious. Do you think? What do you think is important in picking a confidant? And should that person? What's like the pros and cons for having that person be your spouse? Or like, is your confidant your spouse, or is it like a different person?
She's a friend, and she's a confidant.
Okay.
She was driving out when you drove in.
Okay.
And she only did that because you were coming, right? She didn't know you. She didn't like you or anything. Not really. Right?
Just a bad aura.
No.
Yeah.
No, she is my confidant, but she's not, she definitely we talk about confidential things.
Yeah.
But my real confidant is my high school buddy. He's like my brother, even closer than my brother. I have one brother, no sisters. But Jim is my closest friend. And I can call Jim up at 3 a.m. I can call him anytime, and I can tell him, geez, we were just talking the other day. I said, Jim, we're getting old, but you know what? We're still stupid. We still laugh. We still, and we used to when we were young, we'd look, we don't want to be like that, pointing to an old person.
Right.
Man, I mean, they don't even think anymore. They don't even,
right.
They're in a cloud, they're in a fog. Well, we're there, but we're not in the fog. We recognize we still laugh, we still have fun, we still joke around. We talk about things we probably shouldn't be talking about, way back when. And we probably should have been in jail then, so just doing stupid stuff. Stealing watermelons and all kinds of stupid stuff when we were young.
Yeah.
We used to drive down, we lived on farms. Right. We used to drive down and be in the bed of a pickup with a rope and rope mailboxes. Well, that's bad. But what was bad was the mailbox would come out and came up in the bed of the pickup at high speed and knocked one of us out. That was stupid. So anyway, yeah, he's a confidant.
Yeah.
Still today.
Yeah. That's, definitely valuable. I think I think everyone just has like a really deep need to feel understood, right? Mm-hmm. And I think especially if you're one in like a pretty I don't know. Would you describe your job as like stressful, or it's like a high output job for sure? You're a really like busy person, it seems like, but
stressful when there's deadlines and there's too many of them. That's stressful. That can be stressful. But being on the job, I mean, that's a relief of stress. John and I just walking through the scene the other day. I mean, we're intent, and you might think that we're stressed, but we're not. I mean, we're enjoying it. It's fun. We're high-fiving afterwards.
Yeah.
We made it out of there safely because we were in a bad area the other day.
Yeah.
But that feels good. I mean, when we finish a case, and I can't think of one. The 10 years we've been together that John and I, my other partners, Cheryl and Melissa, have ever left saying we screwed it up or that we feel that, that was bad and I never want to do one of those again. We love them. We love them. And we don't care the outcome because that's not what we're there for. We're there just to find the truth. Mm-hmm. What happened or what didn't happen. Just as important for us, like in South Dakota, a year and a half ago, a person was exonerated, is in jail for, that's not in my book either, was in jail for a year for a murder he didn't commit because of the fact that the investigator that was at the scene of his first case, and he had to make it go, and he arrested him for the murder of his wife and his impossibility to do. You couldn't do it, but he didn't understand. He had no background in pathology, he had no background in hangings, and none of that. So that's rewarding to see the truth come out and to protect the innocent as much as go after the guilty.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes a lot of sense. What do you see in the future for your line of work and your company in general?
Just improving, getting better and better in bringing them in. I've got 3 great people, John and Melissa and Cheryl. Got some other associates on the side that we go to for DNA companies, that we use. And it's a relationship that we built over years and years. So what do I see in the future? Just getting better and improving, always looking for somebody that can help. And it's like being our best tomorrow from today.
Right.
And we don't fool around. We're not foolish. We're not flippant. We're very, I would say, seasoned. and very caring about our clients.
Right.
You know, one of the most important things is about a client. 75, and I always say this, don't I, John? 75% of our business is people skills. Like you have great people skills. I can tell that after talking to you for 5 minutes.
All right. Well,
You're very smart, and so we judge people. I mean, judge people about, you know, when we go to a scene, a witness or different people involved, we judge them that, hey, this guy's going to be pretty good, or this person has got problems, you know, that kind of thing. So we have to make these quick decisions. I got off topic a little bit.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'm fine being complimented. Thank you. So it's a pretty like expertise-driven line of work that you're in. What are like the ways that you can scale your company and like put your own time to like the most effective use?
I don't quite understand what you mean by that.
Like in terms of like just a general, like most companies, if they want to grow, they need to be able to like scale up like what they're doing to be able to help help a large number of people, right? With like the same number of founders or whoever, right? So that, like there's only one of you, but if you create an organization, you can help like many more people if you're able to like to grow your organization.
More clients, help
Yeah,
more clients.
well-
and in other words, spread out and be able to.
Well, yeah, maybe a better way of asking is just how can you grow your impact in a field where it seems like your individual expertise and experience is really important for like each individual case. How do you grow your impact like exponentially beyond yourself?
Well, my Melissa and Cheryl, my partners, and John, they could go on any of these cases and do what I do.
Okay.
And I'm not the only answer, and they are just as good. And I went through a lot of detail to pick these people, a lot of detail, really looking into their background, really looking into their past, and especially about their people skills. It's more important to me to have people skills, people skill type people where people like them, than it is their expertise. Because I've had people come and try out with the company that are very, very knowledgeable, but don't know how to deal with people. I mean, I had one person tell a client, the client said, well, I think this piece of paper here, meaning a crime scene or something, I think that this is red ink. Oh no, this is black ink, you're wrong. Well, she was right, but you don't do that, you know what I mean? Yeah. That you can't do that. And so I need people that have people skills and can be trusted to where that client will call us back. Well, what does that do? It creates more clients by word of mouth. Nicholas, I don't want to expand any much more than where we are.
Sure.
I want to have a succession. I'm already planning on succession. John and I've talked about it many times. In fact, I'd like John to take over the company. I'd like John to do because of his skills. And John can run this company. And Melissa could run this company. Cheryl sort of could have, but she's wanting to retire with her and her husband. And they bought this big ranch. But I'm happy where it is. And I just let God make it develop where it's going to go.
Sure.
Not about me, you know.
Yeah. So do you think you'll ever retire?
No. I thought I was at 70, but I'm not going to retire. This is what I tell everybody, and this is sort of a humorous thing. I'm going to retire when they drag me off the field.
Right.
And John's already teasing me about that, you know, giving me a bad time about, you know, where's your armband? Where's your armband, Grandpa? You know, what do you say, John? Where the wristband? You know, like you escaped from the home again. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, there's a couple things that you said that it's amazing, like how I don't know, not common. It's like a pretty prevalent idea that like, you know, if people are doing work they love, it's like really meaningful. Why would you quit? Kind of thing. And it's like that's where I want to be when I'm, you know, roughly retirement age.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like what else do? You just kind of sit around and like wait to die? So like having like that purpose is like pretty valuable, I would think. The other thing that you pointed out I thought was really interesting was your view of hiring. Like that, I hear that over and over and over. People say like it's so much easier to teach people how like the technical side of the business than it is to teach them to be good with people.
That's
or
right. Yeah.
like the other one is to think for themselves. If they're like a good critical thinker, like they can learn most other things. But if they don't have really like those two other, and usually people say like one or the other depending on what their business is. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think I heard about like an investment bank that hires primarily English majors. Like no financial background, but like they're well read. Like they have a pretty good like pretty broad view of the world. I don't know, there's just like a lot of value that people can offer if you're willing to like bring up to speed on the technical side.
You know, one of the biggest values that there is, one of the biggest, is learning. And don't forget I said this.
Yeah.
Learning to listen.
Sure.
Learning to listen creates wisdom, because a lot of people don't know how to listen. And that's one of the things that we work on is learning to listen, all of us. And we have to talk to each other about listening, you know, because there's a tendency to want to talk, to over-talk, and we don't. That's a huge part of success, is learning to listen to people.
Okay.
You read about that all the time in many different fields, well, especially personal areas.
Yeah, well, it's getting a huge amount of traction. It seems like everyone's. I think it's becoming like more appreciated, which is good. What do you find works well for that? Because I don't know, I struggle with just shutting up sometimes, right? In like my relationships and just business and other things. What do you think works well in like keeping your ears open?
You know, people that listen a lot don't have to talk. I mean, a wise person, and I'm not saying I'm a great wise person, all right?
Yeah.
But a wise person I've learned from others is one that just sits there and doesn't give commentary. Doesn't have to give commentary. His yes is his yes, his no is his no. And when he or she opens their mouth, they've got something to say. You know why they have something to say? Because they listen to you. They listen. And a lot of people don't recognize it. People just want to talk, be a listener. And a lot of times they're just getting stuff out, even in cases where we go. I mean, we have attorneys that we deal with, and that's what we deal with mostly, police officers and attorneys, and especially a police officer that's involved in a shooting. He or she just wants to talk. They need to talk. Well, wait a minute. That was a year or two ago. They've already talked to somebody else. I'll give you an example. I'm in trial right now in a place, and I'm not going to identify it, where the police officer, his partner was killed. And the murderer of his partner almost killed him. He'd been hit multiple times in his body, and he survived. And this happened many years ago, and when we interviewed him, John, Cheryl, and myself, it was cathartic to him. He never went back to the scene. He never was really interviewed. And that was amazing. All he wanted to do was talk. Because I took him into a private room to have him take his clothes off to be able to take pictures of his scars, the bullet wounds that were from his foot to his head. And he just wanted to talk. And all I did was just have the presence of mind, just shut up, you know. And don't say things like, well, yeah, I see this bullet hole. Yeah, I got shot one time, which I did.
Yeah, comparing scars.
Yeah, just come on, you know. But you have to be able to know that and identify that. And believe it or not, people that got years and years of experience haven't learned that yet. Am I right, John? I'm right. I mean, they haven't learned it yet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, it's a valuable thing to learn for sure. It seems almost like some people kind of want there's kind of a point where it's just like a normal conversation. They're like, oh, let me tell you about myself. And there's kind of a point where it becomes like therapy. And it seems like, I mean, sometimes people need that, right? Like, especially if you've been through a traumatic event. It sounds kind of like the guy you're describing is that he needed someone to like hear him and
Mm-hmm.
to put his thoughts outside of his own head and
Yeah.
get someone else to kind of validate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. You have an interesting like style of like talking to people. You kind of have that. When we were in here earlier, I felt like I was just like you would ask a question and just like leave like long empty silence, and I would just like I was filling that silence and kind of like babbling along, spilling my guts. Like, oh, this guy has been a cop. Like this is it's like a pretty good technique if you're trying to get information from someone.
But it was more than, you know what it was?
What's that?
Wanted to know about you.
Yeah.
I like people.
No,
I like to hear your background.
Well, I think it was well intentioned. I don't think you're like grilling me. I think you're a curious person. I think it's you have a very good technique for getting information out of people.
Oh, is that right?
Which is
Well, I know a lot about you already.
Quite
Know
a
where
bit.
your mom is, know where your dad is, know where your sister is. I know your sister's name.
Yeah.
All that. And that's interesting to me. I mean, because next time I see you, I'll ask you about one of those. Well, how are they doing? How's Kaylee doing? Kaylee, right?
Keatley.
Keely, how's she doing? You
Yeah.
know? What's she up to? And younger than you, and
Yeah.
where you went to school.
Yeah. And this is not long after we met. It's like
You should go to medical school because you do have a lot of bedside skills.
There's other ways to put that to work too, I think.
Yeah. But you'd make a great doctor.
Thank you.
You really would. You really would. And I'm not just saying that. You're very smart. You're very, very smart. Very articulate. Good vocabulary.
Well, but I think the vocabulary makes me seem smarter than I am, which is it's a nice benefit. But anyway, back to you. Sorry.
I thought this was about you.
We just spent like 10 minutes talking about me. You've covered a lot of the things I was curious about. Do you have kind of any closing thoughts on if you were like kind of starting like back at the beginning of your like forensic consulting days? Would you have set that business up any differently, or would you have tried different ways of growing it and like getting your name recognition out, and would you have done anything differently from how you did it?
I really don't think so because of the digital world wasn't there when I started. Fax machines weren't even there when I started. And it was just the lectures are the things that got me where I am. For instance, just to give a good example, it's happened over and over and over again. I teach every year in Las Vegas. And there were some police officers from New Jersey. And because of that lecture, whatever I said or did or in that lecture, now I go to Princeton University every year and teach at Princeton University every June. And the next one's coming up in June the 15th, I believe, this year. And so I go there every year. And then when I go there, somebody in that class, well, would you come lecture? And one's coming up in Dallas, Texas, because that person was in the lecture. So that, I don't advertise. And I'll tell you one reason why I don't advertise. I was in a case in Kentucky where the defense attorney said, well, you advertise, don't you? And I said, no, I don't advertise. He jumped all over me. He says, well, you have a website. I didn't have a website then. But, you know, he made such a huge deal about a police officer that's a consultant having to advertise to get business. That was a negative he was going to throw to the jury, but it was in a deposition. And I thought, well, you know, maybe he's right. I mean, I don't need to advertise. I've been blessed very, very, very well. And as I said, I do it all over again. So I can't think of any. I wish I'd have done this differently. I wish I would have treated this person differently. No, it's been good. It's been really. Only bad thing about my job is John. If we could get rid of him, everything would be better.
That's not what you were saying earlier. What would you?
If I don't tease people, I don't like them. All right.
Right. What would you do today if you were starting your business? You know, given like the modern world with like internet and all that stuff.
I would really get involved in the DNA again, learn a lot about it. I know a lot about DNA. I'd learn about computer skills. I would learn about being like John. He's very, very good at it. That's one thing that I lack in is being able to be I had to go to a guy today to just get to be able to look at, to download a different program to be able to get into a thumb drive that only likes PCs. I mean, the Mac just won't play it. So, I mean, this guy, I couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there and he just gets on, he puts thumb drive in his PC and he reformats it and stuff and he makes it work. Then we plugged it into mine. Well, it didn't work. So he's holding it for me to get it. But he knew where to go. I don't have those skills. I don't have those skills. But I would go to the same schools. I'd get the same education. And I would associate with people that I would think are smarter than me. And get away from what I've had in the past is ego, competitiveness. I've had that, especially when I was working narcotics.
Do you feel like that's easier as you get older?
Yeah, it is. That's what happened. It's age.
Well, was there a tipping point for you?
I think the tipping point was after I got out of narcotics. And I recognized that, man, we were just competitive. The county wanted to beat the city. We wanted to do everything we could to make them look bad. We wanted to get the most arrest instead of being a team. And it was when I got into homicide, I think, and especially moving from homicide into community policing. Community policing is all about teamwork. I mean, it's taking communities back. And I love community policing. It was going into a neighborhood like Columbiaville, which you haven't heard about maybe, or you
Well, you had a part in your book about
community
policing, or community policing. I think was it just in Portland?
It was.
Yeah.
And it's working with people that cops don't like. Police officer sharing an office with a social worker, or literacy, or working with illiteracy, working with transportation, working with recreation, working with kids. I mean, come on. That's not our thought, but it's the best thing you could ever do because you take communities back. You prevent crime. You're really doing real police work.
Yeah.
And that takes a certain type of person that likes people. You got to like people, and you got to know when to use your skills. You have to know when that a fist of iron or a fist of velvet. Fist of iron meaning you're going to go to jail. You know, you've committed this crime. Or a fist of velvet, giving somebody a break. Working with someone. And you take the community back because you get the people in the community. Being disenfranchised and being poor doesn't mean you're not smart. And so you get people to get on advisory boards in community policing. It's all about people. That's what we're talking about. Homicides, narcotics, everything. And when you take the self out of it, to answer your question, and you take the me first, and you sit in the back instead of always wanting to be in the front, you become very successful.
Right, that's a good way to go. One thing that I think I skipped over earlier that I do want to make sure to ask you about, it's like, how accurate do you think like media portrayals of what you do are, not necessarily like the news, but like, I don't know, TV shows, books, movies. Are there any that you think are particularly accurate, or are they just generally garbage? Like, do they mostly miss
Most
the
of them
mark?
are garbage. I wouldn't say they're garbage. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. It's just.
But non-factual, probably not inaccurate.
Many of them, they have to adjust everything. I mean, we've done TV things before, and we tell them it's either the facts or we're out of here. You cannot twist this. Do not twist it because it's a real case. So yeah, but the one that I think that was really, really good. It's not only more had to do with unsolved homicides. I mean, it was a fictional thing, but they really dealt with cold cases. They really worked and used facts from other cases, and they didn't twist it. I mean, it's just like it was.
Like the writers have done a lot of research.
Yeah,
you could tell.
They've done a lot of research. You bet. So yeah, most of them they're entertainment. I mean, they're very not factual at all.
All right. I mean,
I said, how could that ever happen? I mean, come on, give me a break.
Yeah, I suspected that might be the case, but I was curious if there were. Do you remember what the name of the one that like did a good job was?
It was cold case homicides or cold cases or
Cold
something
case
like
files.
that. It was cold case files or something like that.
I don't know if that's.
I even testified to a jury back east, and it came up that the only one that was factual, because the attorney asked me that same question. defense attorney.
Interesting.
I said, well, the only one that I would put a lot of credence in would be cold case homicides. I can't remember the actual name of that thing. It's gone now.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So I've got. Do you do much reading?
Mm-hmm.
What do you
John
like?
Grisham. I knew you were going to ask that.
Okay. What do you?
I love Grisham books.
Grisham.
Yeah.
Do you read mostly fiction, or do you find yourself doing a lot of nonfiction reading?
No, I do nonfiction. I do a lot of nonfiction. Biographies. I like biographies. Different people.
Right.
The Queen of England, very, very interesting. Elizabeth. Biographies like that. Some of our presidents, I enjoy reading those, what their life was like.
Mm-hmm.
But for fiction, I love John Grisham books. You know why? Because it's almost like a prediction of what's going to happen. And he'll write a book about something on a jury, or he'll write a book about some pharmaceutical, or he'll write a book about lawyers and corruption, and I'll be darned if it doesn't happen. I mean, the same thing he wrote about develops, and I expect one to come out very soon about Congress and the swamp,
Yeah.
something like that, or the media. I mean, he'll pick up on things like that long before it comes to fruition, and he'll write about it and make a fictional story about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thanks for sharing your time with me. I've
You're
enjoyed
welcome.
learning about your career
You're welcome.
and your work.
And thanks for having me do it.